Thank you, Mr. Speaker. They say that talk is cheap, but for hard-working Americans, the President's talk is very expensive. President Obama has spent the past year making speech after speech about the need for Washington to restore fiscal discipline. But what he says isn't what he does. During the campaign, Obama promised he would go through the budget, line by line, to reduce spending. But it seems as though a few lines is all that he has cut. The President began his campaign last spring when he rushed to the microphone to announce his order to his cabinet to reduce spending by $100 million. Then he went to the podium to tout more fiscal restraint by announcing a spending freeze, but we quickly learned that it only affects less than 20% of the budget. And recent press reports reveal he cut $1 million in funding for an Olympic scholarship program and another $2 million subsidy for cotton and peanuts. If the President is serious about fiscal discipline, he's going to have to remove more than a couple of peanuts from his federal budget. These meager cuts are just another example of the administration's arrogance, ignorance, and incompetence. The President has proposed a $3.8 trillion budget for 2011, boasting the deficit to a record high of $1.6 trillion, a record he broke last year when he introduced a budget with a $1.4 trillion deficit. Let me put that into perspective. The average deficit when Republicans were in power was $104 billion. The average deficit, now that Democrats are in control, is $1.1 trillion. What that means is each man, woman, and child owe $46,000 apiece. As hardworking Americans are struggling to balance their checkbooks, they are frustrated that Congress can't do the same. They aren't just frustrated, they are angry. I share the concerns of the American people. That's why I have introduced H.J. Resolution 75, which is a balanced budget amendment to the U.S. Constitution, aimed at reining in the chronic deficits in spending. We absolutely must stop the outrageous spending by Congress. Our children and grandchildren's future depend upon our doing so. My amendment would make sure that government does not spend more than it takes in. My amendment would also make sure that any extra revenue would be returned to the taxpayers at the end of the year. After decades of deficit spending, to make balancing our budgets the rule, not the exception. For too long, Congress has acted as if it has a credit card with no limit and a bill that our children and grandchildren will be forced to pay. Individuals cannot spend more money than they earn, and neither should Washington. The fact is, if the family budget cannot afford to go into debt, neither should the federal budget. The only way we're ever going to get our economy back on track is by leaving dollars in the hands of individuals, and particularly leaving dollars in the hands of small businesses, so that they can buy inventory and can hire permanent employees. Small business is the economic engine that pulls along the train of prosperity in America. We need to stimulate small business, not bigger government. Congress must now make tough decisions, slow down the rapid growth of government, and get back to the fiscally responsible government that the American people expect and demand. I'm committed to doing just that. I urge my colleagues to join in this effort, and I urge the American people to demand a balanced budget from this Congress. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.